Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. The topic for today's webinar is Fiddler Everywhere 1.0. Before we get started, let's do a quick sound check. If you have joined through your phone, I would recommend you to switch to computer because we've seen few issues while connecting from phone. And if you still can't hear me, please try restarting GoToWebinar Viewer. Or if you have other audio or video problems, don't worry. We'll send you a link to the recording soon after the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them using the questions section in the GoToWebinar viewer. Experts from our team will answer your questions, or I can take them at the end. Finally, we're all working from home, and we apologize in advance for any inconvenience caused because of the network connectivity or any other issues. And in case I get disconnected, one of my colleagues will take over. And I am your host for today. My name is Nishchal Reddy. I work as a product manager for Fiddler. I lead new growth initiatives at Progress, and I have experience working in different product functions like engineering and product management. And in my free time, I like to travel. While traveling, I love to explore new local cuisines, which is not really possible given the current conditions. All right, and this is the agenda for today. We will first start by looking at evolution of Fiddler, and then I will briefly walk you through what's new in Fiddler Everywhere 1.0, followed by a demo. So let's get started. So let's get started by a brief introduction on what Fiddler actually is. Fiddler is a web debug proxy tool which can capture all HTTP requests and responses between your computer and internet. It can essentially sit in between your computer and internet and capture HTTP traffic. And it works on the man-in-the-middle principles. So apart from intercepting traffic, it can also do interesting things like modifying requests and responses through which you can simulate error conditions, reproduce issues. I'll probably cover some of these examples in the demo. And Fiddler is used for a variety of different use cases, most common being debugging applications, be it web, mobile, or installable applications. But Fiddler is also used for other use cases like API development, performance testing, monitoring, malware analysis, so on and so forth. Now let's see how Fiddler has evolved over time. Fiddler has been like the de facto web proxy tool for more than a decade. The first version was released sometime in 2003, and Eric Lawrence has built a great tool and a great community around Fiddler. And then Telerik acquired Fiddler in 2012 and has been offering Fiddler as part of its portfolio of products. And in 2014, Progress acquired Telerik, and Fiddler team released first version of Fiddler Everywhere sometime in the early of 2019. And we've been working on improving Fiddler Everywhere since then. And we have recently released the 1.0 version publicly. So if you have not tried it before, I would highly recommend you to give it a try. You can download the latest version of Fiddler Everywhere from telerik.com/fiddler URL. And just give it a try and let us know if, your feedback and if you want to see any other specific features or use cases in Fiddler. So this is the screenshot of Fiddler Classic or the Windows version, which is still very functional and relevant and feature-rich and currently supported only on Windows. And this is Fiddler Everywhere sometime in early 2019. As you can see, it is pretty minimal and has very basic features. And finally, this is how it looks today. We have spent a lot of time in not only improving the existing features, but have also made sure that Fiddler Everywhere layout is familiar for Fiddler Classic audience so that you can feel right at home when using Fiddler Everywhere. All right, before I proceed further, I have some hand raises and some questions. Let's quickly see if everything's fine. Yeah, a lot of people are confirming that they can hear me. Thanks for the confirmation. So I'll just continue. Sorry for the interruption. All right, so this is the current state of Fiddler Everywhere. So this is how, if you download Fiddler Everywhere and install and use it, this is how it will look. So how did we actually get here? It all started with you. So we did surveys and we got around 2,000 responses from our Fiddler community. We also got great qualitative feedback through research calls, We spoke to more than 200 users from our community. The feedback has been really tremendous. It gave us pretty good insights into how our users are using the product. And all the feedback has helped us shape our roadmap and helped us really build a tool that suits your needs and your use cases. And in our interviews, the most requested core features were traffic capture and inspection, followed by Autoresponder and Composer. And apart from these, we also got requests to make Fiddler more intuitive by improving the layout and user experience. And we also got requests to support other platforms like Mac and Linux. And finally, our users have also requested for collaboration in Fiddler to make it easy to use and collaborate with their teammates. All right, now let's look at what's new in Fiddler Everywhere 1.0. First up, it is now supported on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So if you can download and use it in any of these platforms. And next is the traffic inspection and capture. It works in the exact same way as you would use it in Fiddler Classic, but with better usability and clean and simple design. And in traffic capture, we have also added column level filtering to easily set filters. So you can easily set or use or create complex conditions using operators like and or to create complex filtering logic. You can also use different string comparison functions like contains, equals, so on and so forth, to further create specific filters. You can also filter by request and response headers using advanced filters. So if you're planning to look at the traffic by setting some filters based on request and response headers, you can use advanced filtering to do that. And another improvement we did in Fiddler Everywhere is to save and organize captured traffic. You can save the captured traffic by clicking on the Save button. It will create a new file in your local workspace. So you can further open the captured traffic in new tab so that you don't have to open multiple windows or you don't have to switch context. Everything is in one single workspace for you to access and debug. And another major feature we have improved is Composer. In fact, we have built this feature from ground up to suit to the modern API development needs. You can easily create and execute requests in the all new Composer. And it now comes with integrated request and response view through which you can execute and look at results in the same view without switching context. Composer also comes with all the goodness it had in Fiddler Classic. You can open any captured traffic in Composer to replay the request or change any headers and parameters to test the request. Finally, Composer now has support for collections with which you can save and organize requests under common folders. This will make it easy for you to organize the requests and share it with the team. This will specifically be useful when you are building a new API. You can create a collection and share it with your front-end team. This will also act as a self-explanatory and executable documentation that can be shared with your front-end development team. Finally, we have also added support for Autoresponder, through which you can mock requests and responses and do other interesting use cases like simulating latencies, error conditions, no network conditions, some of which I will probably show in the demo. And another major area where we have improved in Fiddler Everywhere is around collaboration. So Fiddler has long been a standalone tool, which was mostly used in individual capacity. But when we spoke to our users from the community, a lot of users wanted to have some kind of collaboration aspect in Fiddler so that they can use it in team environment. So this is where we added support for collaboration through sharing sessions, collections, and autoresponder rules. So just delving a little bit into more details. So you can save any captured traffic by clicking on Save button, and then you can also share it by entering the email ID of the receivers. I will probably show you some of these in the demo in a moment. And similarly, you can also share any Composer collections you create. And like I said, this will be very useful when you're if you're working in a backend development team, and if you're building some APIs, you can create a collection and share it with your front-end team, who can then use it to build the user interface. And finally, you can also create autoresponder rules like you would in Fiddler Classic, but in Fiddler Everywhere, you can also easily share them with your team with but just by entering email IDs. You don't have to manually export them and import it into your workspace. So when do you actually need collaboration, right? So if you're a developer working on debugging an issue, or if you're building a new API, then you can use collaboration functionality to probably save the captured traffic, highlight the requests that are causing issues, and then share it with your team to further collaborate on them. Or if you're building a new API, you can use composer collections to create logical units under which you can document all your requests, and then share that collection with your front-end team or with your team, who can then consume this new API. And if you're a tech support engineer trying to troubleshoot an issue and wants to share your analysis with your development teams, collaboration will be very useful. You can capture the traffic, you can save it, and then you can highlight specific requests, you can add comments, and then you can share it with your team and then collaborate on top of that captured traffic. Similarly, if you're a QA engineer who is testing an application and found some issues, or if you are using Autoresponder to simulate some error scenarios and you want to share your findings with your team, you can use collaboration to share them with your team. And finally, if you're using a third-party API and you want to quickly execute the REST endpoints and test it out, and you can use composer collections to do that. And not only executing and testing them, but once you have executed and created those requests, you can also share it with your team so that they can start consuming them and you can collaborate on top of it. So now let's get into the demo where I will try to demonstrate some of these features. So what I'm going to do in this demo is I'm going to take a small example. I'm going to take a small form using which I'll try to capture traffic. I'll try to use some autoresponder rules to simulate some error conditions and so on and so forth. So let's get started. So before I start the demo, let me quickly see if we have any outstanding questions so far. Not yet. So let me just delve into the demo right now. All right, let me open my browser and let me launch Fiddler. I already have it open, so I'm going to open that. All right, so this is how Fiddler Everywhere looks. If you have already installed it, you must be familiar with it. If you have not tried it, I would highly recommend you to download the latest version. You can download the latest version by visiting telerik.com/fiddler. Yeah, and you can visit the download page and get the latest version. All right, so let's start with basics, right? So if you look at the whole layout, it's still pretty similar to Fiddler Classic, right? You have the traffic capture section, and then you have the inspectors over here, right? It's pretty similar. So now let's start capturing traffic. Before you start capturing traffic, if you have installed the application for the first time, the key thing that you have to do is you have to trust the root certificate. You can trust the root certificate by going to settings, and then you have to click on the trust root certificate. So by installing the root certificate, Fiddler will be able to intercept the HTTPS traffic with the man-in-the-middle principles. So this is very critical if you are planning to capture and inspect HTTPS traffic. If you're only looking to inspect HTTP traffic, then this step is not required. All right, so once you set up the root certificate, the next thing is to start capturing traffic. Let's see how you can do that. So to start capturing traffic, all you have to do is toggle the button here, and which will start capturing the traffic. So let's refresh the browser and to capture some traffic. I'm going to open Fiddler website. So it is loading. All right, now if we switch back to Fiddler, you can see that it has already started capturing a lot of requests here. So let me stop capturing now. So once you capture the traffic, you can also save the traffic. So let's try to save the traffic that we have currently captured. So to save it, we have to click on Save button here and give it some name. I'll just say Telerik Fiddler and save. So once you save it, you can find the saved traffic on the in your workspace. So you can open the captured traffic or saved traffic by double-clicking on it. Once you double-click it, it will open it in a new tab so that you can, debug the. You can look at the request it has captured, or even you can switch to the live traffic and then start capturing again. So this is really very handy if you are trying to, switch between multiple sessions that you have captured. So everything is in one single workspace. right? So yeah, and then you can select any request, and you can inspect the request and response headers, body. You can look at JSON views and all other views, right? It's very similar to Fiddler Classic. All right. So okay, now that we have looked at some of the basics, now let's take a small example and try to demonstrate how you can use Fiddler Everywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit a simple contact us form. So I've taken this contact us form from the Telerik domain. So I'm going to enter some random options here, and then I'm going to capture traffic and then submit the form. So before we capture traffic, let's remove all the traffic that we've captured so far, and let's start capturing. So now it has started capturing traffic. So let me enter some comments here since it is mandatory. So now let me just submit the form here. So as soon as I submit the form, all right, so the submission was successful. Now if you switch to Fiddler Everywhere, you can see that it has captured a lot of traffic. So now let's try to pause the traffic. So since we have submitted this form on telerik.com domain, and I want to find out what request is fired when I submit the form. I essentially want to find out the request which will submit my details that I have entered in the form. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'll first filter all the traffic based on the domain, right? So since this form was submitted on Telerik domain, I'm going to apply a filter on host to just show me the traffic from telerik.com. Right. So this is the traffic that was generated by Telerik.com. If you look at all the requests, it is pretty clear that this is the request that got fired when I have submitted the form. So this is a post request, which is essentially sending all the details that we've filled. So if you look at the request headers here, you can look at all the details it has submitted in this post request. So this is how you can use Fiddler to capture traffic and set filters based on, you can set filters on any of the columns. You can set filters on host, URL, or even protocol, so on and so forth. So now that we have identified the request that is actually fired when you submit the form, let's use Autoresponder rules to simulate some of the error conditions and see how this form will perform. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, let me open the form again. I'll go back and I'll open the contact us form. So yeah, we have this form here, right? So it is working fine so far because I've just chosen the happy path. So let's try to test this form for some interesting scenarios, which would probably occur in real world conditions, right? So typically in real world conditions, what will happen is because of the bandwidth that the users will have, they might see some issues in low latency conditions or if the bandwidth is low. So let's try to simulate such condition and see how does this form perform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce an artificial delay of 5 seconds after I click the submit. Right, so as soon as I click submit, it will not submit this form instantaneously. Instead, it will add a 5 seconds delay, and then it will submit the form. So as an end user, what I would expect is during this delay, I should be shown some kind of loading symbol so that I'll understand that something's happening behind the scenes. So to test this scenario, what we have to do is we have to create an autoresponder rule. Since after you click submit, this is the request that is going to be filed, I'm going to create an autoresponder rule using this request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this post request, and then I'm going to add a new rule. This will add a new rule in the autoresponder. So if you look at this autoresponder, let's click on edit. So if you look at this autoresponder, it's pretty simple. Whenever this URL is matched, right, the action that we define below will be executed. You can define actions, different kinds of actions. You can define actions saying, whenever this URL is matched, exit the request, drop the request, or introduce a delay, or you can even, craft your own custom response, or you can even choose a file from your local system to respond with. So for this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a delay of 5 seconds. So the seconds, we have to enter the seconds in milliseconds. So I'm going to enter 5,000 here and save it. And let me enable autoresponder rules here, and I'll enable traffic capturing as well. So now if we, so now what I've done is I've created an autoresponder rule which would introduce a 5 second delay whenever we submit, the form, the contact us form. So now let me switch back to the website where we have the contact us form. I already have filled all the data. So let me click on the submit. So now if you look at it, it has not submitted the request instantaneously, right? It's taking some time. More specifically, it will take 5 seconds before it submits the request. Here we go. So the form got submitted in 5 seconds. So far the form is working fine, right? So we have introduced some delay to see if the form is showing proper loading icon. It is showing us proper loading icon while it is submitting the request. So everything is working fine so far. So similarly, you can also create more complex scenarios. Now let's try to test another condition. So let me open the contact us form again. So far what we have tested is we have tested by simply submitting a request, and then we have also introduced a small delay. It has worked fine so far. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how the form will perform when when the requests are dropped, right? So in real world conditions, after I click submit, the request could be dropped for any reasons, right? Maybe the network connection is not fine, or for any reason, if the request is dropped after I click submit, let's see how does the form perform. As an end user, I would expect the form to show me proper error messages when request is failed, right? Let's see if this form will perform as expected. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again select the same request, which is fired after you click on submit of that contact us form. So I'm going to create another autoresponder rule. So in this rule, what I'm going to do is whenever this URL is matched, I'm going to drop the request. Right, I'm going to select drop from this drop down. So what it does is whenever I submit the form, this rule will be matched, and when this rule is matched, the request will be dropped. So will not get any response from the server. The details will not be submitted to the server, right? So let's see how will the form perform in this scenario. So I have enabled the autoresponder rule and the autoresponder. I also have live traffic capturing enabled. So now let's go back to the website and select some sample options here. And I'll just say Fiddler Everywhere, enter some details, and click on Contact Us. So now I have submitted the form. Just keep in mind that we have disabled the delay rule here. So we shouldn't be expecting any delay. Rather, the form should have been submitted instantaneously, but it's still loading. Let's go back to Fiddler and see what kind of requests we got from the website. So if you look here, we got 2 requests for submitting the form, 2 post requests. And if you go to the inspectors, you can clearly see that the request was dropped because of the autoresponder rule that we have configured. So although the request got dropped, right? So the request will never be responded by the server. So we have just dropped the request. But the form is kind of stuck in the never-ending loading, right? So this form is not really providing us good error messages when the request is failing. So typically what I would expect is when such requests fail, we should show proper error message to the user so that he can figure out what he has to do next, either to submit new request or probably contact the support team or whatever, right? So clearly there is room for improvements in this specific scenario. Similarly, let's try another simple use case, right? So far what we have tried is we have tried to create an autoresponder rule to introduce an artificial delay, and we also created an autoresponder rule to drop the request. Now let's create another autoresponder rule to return a 404 error message, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another autoresponder rule with the same post request. So whenever I submit the contact us form, I'm going to return a 404 error message. So instead of sending 200, I'm going to return 404 not found, right? So let's see how it performs now. So as an end user, again, I would expect if my submission fails, I would expect to see some kind of error messages in the form. Let's see if the form will work as expected or not. So I have enabled the autoresponder rule and I have the traffic capture enabled. Let's select some options here. I'll say Fiddler, and then I'll say test, and I'll click on contact us. So if you observe closely, as soon as I click contact us, we are seeing the loading icon for a very brief amount of time, and it is getting disappeared. So we are not sure if my submission is successful, or I don't know why it is failing. It's not very clear as an end user, right? So clearly there is a good room for improvement in this workflow as well. So the error conditions are not properly handled. So now if you switch to Fiddler, you can clearly see that every time I clicked on the contact us, it has tried to submit a post request. And since we have defined an autoresponder rule to return 404, it is returning 404, but the form is not able to handle the error code properly. Right. So these are some of the examples on how you can use autoresponder to simulate error conditions in your applications. You can really test a lot of complex conditions like no network conditions, or you can even choose a file from your local disk. So why don't we let me show you another example where you can use files from your local machine. So this is like a standard hello world kind of an example when someone from our team tries to demo the autoresponder feature. So here we have a google.com search website, right? The default google.com search website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the Google image with the progress image. So maybe we'll create progress search engine. So to do that, what we have to do is we first have to get the URL of the image. So let me open that image in the new tab. So I'll copy the image URL, and I'll go back to Fiddler, and I'll create a new Fiddler. I'll create a new autoresponder rule. I'll create a match condition to match this exact URL. So whenever the browser tries to load this URL, what we're going to do is we're going to pick an image from my local machine. So to do that, I'm going to choose a saved response file. And then I have a progress logo on my system. So I'm going to select that image, and I'm going to add this rule to the queue. So now what happens is, as soon as I refresh Google website, whenever the browser makes request for Google image, we are going to respond it from an image from my local disk. Let's see what happens once I refresh. There you go. So since the autoresponder rule is enabled, as soon as the browser makes request for this specific image, we are going to respond with an image from my local machine. Similarly, you can use you can use these kind of rules for replacing JavaScript files on your live websites, or you can also use it to replace CSS files if you want to quickly test your changes against production websites or applications. So you can do much more. So these are a couple of examples on how you can use autoresponder, but the breadth of use cases that you can accomplish with autoresponder are really huge, right? All right, so now that we have demonstrated how you can use autoresponder and traffic capturing, let me also quickly touch upon how you can use collaboration in Fiddler Everywhere. So here, let's say while debugging my application, I have encountered some issues here, and I want to share these issues with my colleagues, right? So I can quickly add comments. I can add comments saying, check this out. This seems to be the issue, right? Some comments. And then I can also mark any requests with different colors. I can highlight them in red. It's already highlighted in red. Maybe let me select another color, blue, or you can highlight the request to get attention of whomever you are sharing this with. So once you highlight all the requests and add your comments, you can share it with your team by clicking on share button. And we'll first have to give it a name. Let's say testing form, and then you have to enter the email ID of the person with whom you want to share it with. I'm just going to enter my personal email ID here, and I'll say some test notes and share. So this will share the log files with the receiver, and he will get a notification through email as well as inside the app. As soon as he clicks on the notification, the log file will be automatically loaded into his instance. So the receiver can open the the log file that you've shared. He can look at the requests that you highlighted, the comments that you added, so on and so forth. Similarly, you can also share the autoresponder rules that you've created. Let's say I'm a QA engineer who has found some issues while testing the form. right? And I want to share my findings with my development team. I can probably create a bunch of autoresponder rules, and then I can select those rules that I want to share with them. And then I can click on share, give it a name, probably I'll say testing form rules. And then I can share it by just entering their email ID, right? So they will get a notification as soon as you share it, and clicking on that notification, these rules will be imported inside their Fiddler Everywhere instance. So they don't have to manually export the files and then import it into their instance. Everything happens automatically. So these are the two main features that most of our users use, which is capturing traffic and then using autoresponder rules to test error conditions, simulate issues, so on and so forth. Now let me close all the tabs that I've opened. Now let me show you another important feature, which is Composer. So using Composer, you can quickly execute and test any REST endpoints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an example here. So I've used this website, which has a lot of sample REST endpoints. So I'm going to take list users API first. So I'm going to copy this link or REST endpoint, and I'm going to paste it in Composer. And clicking execute would execute this REST endpoint, and it will show all the response. You can look at the headers, you can look at the response in text format, or you can also look at the body in JSON format, so on and so forth, right? You can easily test any or execute any REST API endpoints and look at requests and responses. You can also change the parameters. For example, if you look at the parameter here, we are fetching the second page, but you can also change the parameter to fetch the third page, or you can really customize any parameters or headers or body, so on and so forth. So let's take another request here. Let's take another REST endpoint for creating a new user. So let me copy the link address here, and I'll switch to Composer. I'm going to paste the request here. So this request is a post request. So I'm going to select the post method. And then this request expects to have a body. So this body, according to this website, so the create request should have a body with name and job, right? So let's copy this body. The body this specific endpoint is expecting the body to be in JSON format. So I'm just going to copy the same body that is listed as an example over there. So now if you execute this request, let me just switch to headers. So now if you execute this request, it will create a new resource in the backend. It will create a new user. And if you go to the JSON view, it will return the ID and the creation date. So this is how you can use Composer to, this is specifically useful when you're trying to get acquainted with new API. You can quickly copy the API endpoints, paste it in Composer, change the headers, parameters, and quickly execute and test it. And apart from executing and testing, the API endpoints, you can also create collections. So let me create a collection here. So I have created new collection, clicked on new collection button here, and I'll name it, let me name it sample collection, right? So once you create a collection, you can save any requests that you create inside these collections. So for example, I'm trying to get acquainted with this user's API, right? So once I've created new request in Composer, I can save it. So to save the request, I have to click on save, and then I have to choose the collection under which I want to put this request. So I'll select sample collection here and say save. So this will save the request under this collection. So similarly, you can also save any number of requests under these collections. So once you save these requests under collection, you can share these collections with your team, right? So let's say if you are a backend developer building an API, you can use Fiddler to test your APIs that you're building. And once your backend API is in a good shape, you can create a collection and then share this collection with your front-end team, right? This will act as a good reference for your front-end team to quickly execute your requests, test it, and understand what all parameters and body each endpoint expects. So to share a collection, all you have to do is click on, okay, let me just go back. So to share a collection, all you have to do is click on share, and then enter the email ID of the person with whom you want to share this collection with. So I'm just going to share it with my personal email ID again. I'll just say blah, 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 and say share. So this will again share the whole collection, and the receiver will get a notification through email as well as inside the app itself. And once they click on that notification, the collection will be loaded into their local workspace. And then they'll be able to collaborate with you. They'll be able to execute and test the request and so on and so forth. So this is how. So I also have another example collection here. As you can see, collections can further. You can further create subfolders inside collection to further group similar endpoints. Right. So here I have all user-related endpoints in one single folder. Similarly, I have all login-related endpoints in another folder. So you can really group them according to the request or endpoints. So with this, I have mostly covered the major aspects and or major features that we have in Fiddler Everywhere, along with the use cases through which you can use these features. So now let me go back to the slides. All right, let me maximize the slides. All right. So again, we are happy to help. So if you are stuck somewhere, or if you are facing some issues, or if you have some feedback, please feel free to reach out to us. And on that note, Fiddler Everywhere Forum has a new home. So you can visit Fiddler Everywhere Forum by by visiting the URL that you're seeing on your screen, or community. You can visit the forum by visiting community.getfiddler.com. You'll be able to log into this forum by using your Fiddler Everywhere identity. So everything will be pretty seamless. And if you have any feedback, we are all ears. We are happy to listen to your feedback. And if you have any specific feature requests or any ideas that you want to, implement, you want to be implemented in Fiddler Everywhere, or is there any use case that you want us to solve for you, which will be useful in your workflow, please feel free to leave your ideas or feature requests in the feature request section. If you visit the Fiddler Everywhere community or Fiddler Everywhere forum and scroll a bit, you'll find feature request section. So you can log all your feature requests here. You can also upvote any feature requests that are already present. So this will really help us to manage all the feature requests in one single place and prioritize them, add it to our backlog, and eventually at some point of time implement in the product as well. So if you have any ideas, if you have any feature requests, please feel free to post it here. And finally, we are also very excited to introduce Fiddler Everywhere Pro. If you are looking for more features around collaboration or email support, you feel free to also subscribe to Fiddler Everywhere Pro plan. Fiddler Everywhere Pro plan will comes with all the basic features. Along with that, it will also come with some unlimited extended features with collaboration, which I have just demoed, as well as email support as well. So you can visit the following URL. We will also paste this URL in the chat to further look at the feature comparison between the free and pro plan. If you think the free plan would be sufficient for you, please feel free to continue to use it. If you think you'll be benefited by pro plan, please feel free to subscribe to that as well. So with this, I'm done with my webinar. I hope you found